The land had already been changed once, but now the change was moving faster than ever before. What had begun as scattered settlements was turning into something far larger, far more permanent. Gold had pulled people from across the world, and with them came ambition, hunger, fear, and power. The rivers no longer flowed quietly. They were cut open, surged, and exhausted. Hills were torn apart. Forests fell one by one, their silence replaced by noise and fire. Where ancient paths once crossed freely, fences rose. Where stories once lived in stone and song, towns now stood. For many settlers, this was progress. For the first peoples, it was loss layered upon loss. Indigenous families watched their land disappear piece by piece. Sacred places were entered without permission, sometimes destroyed without a second thought. Hunting grounds vanished, water sources were poisoned, and survival became harder with every passing year. Resistance existed, but it came at a terrible cost. Those who fought back were punished. Those who spoke were silenced. Many learned that survival meant retreat into memory, into stories, into quiet endurance. As gold began to fade, its legacy remained. Cities had taken root. Melbourne grew wealthy and powerful. Roads and railways spread like veins across the land, carrying goods, soldiers, and control. Australia's colonies no longer saw themselves as temporary. They began to imagine a future of their own. Children were born who had never seen Britain. This land was not exile to them. It was home. A new generation grew up shaped by heat, distance, and hard work. Slowly, a distinct identity began to form, one that was neither fully British nor entirely separate. But while settlers spoke of opportunity and growth, Indigenous people were being pushed further to the margins. Laws were written to control movement. Communities were forced onto missions and reserves. Languages were discouraged. Traditions were treated as obstacles instead of knowledge. Children were taken from their families in the belief that culture could be erased.
I understand.
But culture does not disappear so easily. It survives in whispers. It survives in memory. It survives in the land itself. As the 19th century drew toward its end, Australia stood divided. Wealth and power sat on one side. Dispossession and silence on the other.
Of Australian identity.
Yet both were bound to the same soil.
Complex tapestry.
The colonies began to speak of unity. Of becoming one nation instead of many. Meetings were held.
Missions.
Debates grew louder.
Controlling Indigenous lives.
Flags were imagined. A future was being designed, but not everyone was invited into the conversation. In 1901, the colonies joined together to form a single nation. Australia was born on paper, with celebration and hope. But for the first peoples, this moment passed without recognition. They remained unseen in the laws of the new country, invisible in the story being told. Australia moved forward, carrying pride and contradiction side by side. The land had given gold.
Laws.
It had given space. It had given life. And yet, it had also absorbed pain, displacement, and silence. Still, it endured. Because this land had seen change before. It had survived fire, flood, and time itself. And as a new century began, the land waited once more, holding every story, every footstep, every truth, knowing that history was far from finished. The new nation moved forward with confidence, but beneath that confidence lay unresolved truths. Australia stepped into the 20th century believing it had finally defined itself, yet much of its past remained unspoken. Progress marched ahead, while memory struggled to keep pace. Cities expanded rapidly. Factories rose where bushland once stood. The sound of machinery replaced the rhythm of nature. Immigration increased, bringing new faces and new energy, but also new fears. Laws were created to decide who belonged and who did not. The idea of a white Australia hardened into policy, shaping the nation's identity through exclusion rather than unity. For Indigenous Australians, life became even more restricted. Movement was controlled. Wages were withheld. Families were separated by force. Children were taken with the promise of education, but often lost language, identity, and connection in the process. Generations grew up carrying wounds they did not choose. Yet even in silence, resistance continued. Elders remembered. They taught quietly. Stories were shared under the cover of night, around fires hidden from authority. Songs survived, passed mouth to mouth, heart to heart. Culture bent, but it did not break. As the world beyond Australia descended into conflict, the nation was pulled into wars not of its own making. Young men were sent overseas to fight for ideals they barely understood. Some returned changed. Some did not return at all. War brought pride and grief in equal measure, shaping a national myth of bravery and sacrifice. Back home, women stepped into roles once denied to them. Communities tightened as loss became familiar. Australia learned resilience, but also learned how easily lives could be spent. After the wars, change accelerated again. Cities grew taller. Technology advanced. Migration policies slowly softened, bringing diversity that reshaped streets, schools, and workplaces. The country began to look outward rather than backward. But the past refused to stay buried. Indigenous voices grew stronger.
Learning.
Protests emerged.
True history.
Questions were asked that could no longer be ignored. How could a nation claim fairness while denying its first people recognition? How could progress exist without truth? The land itself seemed to demand answers. Gradually, painfully,
Unity.
Australia began to listen.
Truth.
Laws shifted. Conversations opened. Apologies were spoken, though words alone could never repair everything that had been taken. Healing became a journey rather than a destination. Still, the struggle continued. Identity in Australia became something layered and complex, built from survival, migration, loss, and hope. The country learned that its strength did not come from forgetting its past, but from facing it honestly. The land remained constant through it all. Ancient, patient, watching generations rise and fall. Holding every footprint, every scar, every dream. Australia was never just one story. It was many stories, moving together, sometimes colliding, sometimes healing. And as time continued forward, the land waited not in silence, but in memory, ready for the day when every voice would